Hey folks, Alkers here with another patch review, this time for test patch 61900 that was released on July 27th, 2022. So diving right into it. So the highlights of this patch, just to quickly summarize, I think there's some good balancing changes, a lot of small and impactful improvements, and perhaps the biggest balancing change is changes with regard to rushing things. Significantly, the patrons can no longer rush for gold. That's probably the headline of this patch. So if you've been using inquiries with scholar governors in patron cities and just buying science with gold, that is no longer going to be possible with this patch, which is probably a good thing because scholar governors in patron cities buying inquiry is actually really, really strong and could let you get way ahead in science. There's also a bunch of additional small changes. But that's probably the headline of the patch. I think it's continuing with Mohawk's sort of way of continuing to improve this game week after week, month after month, making it slightly better, adjusting things. Overall, pretty happy with this patch and excited to see how it will change gameplay. Not the most impactful patch, but another one of those small but significant with changes that really fit in together, as well as some really nice quality of life improvements, such as you see urban tiles now giving free roads, wonder locations only being revealed when they're finished. Robust is getting tuned down. Regents no longer chain succession. That's something that was a pet peeve of mine. Really glad to see that has changed. And hold court now actually is a way of getting a courtier. So that's great. If you had a judge leader, you can now potentially use that to get a reliable-ish source of courtiers, as well as improving force march. The setting now, there's now an option for the ability to have force march go just twice X fatigue. So you'll be able to force march just again, move that unit as much as it would be able to move normally, just once again, which I think is great. Remove some of the abuse of force marching halfway across the map if you have a bunch of orders. So all in all, a great patch. That's sort of the headline. And let's now dive into the details. So the first change here is urban tiles now give free roads. This is a great change. If you, like me, started playing the game, you kind of, when I started playing the game, I assumed urban tiles gave roads and then was very shocked that I had to build roads in urban tiles. Now things work the way that you would expect. There are roads in urban tiles, so you don't need to build roads there. So that's a great change. Wonder locations are now only revealed when they're finished. This also makes sense. If you start building a wonder, your opponent does not get instant vision as to where that wonder is. Instead, they only see once the wonder is finished. This makes both thematic sense. People would probably tell people about, hey, have you seen those pyramids at Giza? Only once the pyramids are actually completed, not when they're necessarily under construction. And and I think this also makes it a little harder to snipe wonders because you have to actually find where the wonder is getting built as opposed to having it just revealed to you. And if you've heard me rant about sniping wonders, it's really, really painful when an opponent comes and kills your wonder because you lose everything, all the resources, all the civics, everything that was invested in creating that wonder. And all they need to do is kill the worker or displace the worker. Elephants, for example, can displace things if you can get an elephant in position. So make sure to protect, especially multiplayer wonders that you're constructing. Although with the force march change, it's going to be a little harder for people to arbitrarily walk across the entire map. So also a good change there. Next, we've got adjustments to ship promotions. This is a little cryptic. So hats off here to Xiao Mao, who did some data mining, and you can also see this in the Discord. He has a thread called Datamine 2707 to 2022 discussion. But the TLDR basically is Besieger, Steadfast, Fierce, and Horsebane are no longer available for ships anymore. And there's now 2 new promotions, Marines, that allow plus 25% attack to settlements and plus 25% land-water combat. So that essentially is upgraded off of Amphibious. So let's take a look and test. So here's Marines, as you can see, plus 25% land-water combat and plus 25 into settlements, which includes cities and tribal sites, and that does require Amphibious as a prerequisite. So slight changes to ship promotion, and importantly, also, I think it's worth noting in the ship promotion aspect, Grappler now is minus 50% attack strength. It used to be minus 20% total strength, combat strength. Now it's just minus 50 attack and the stun. This makes getting grapplers on all your fleets all your ships less appealing. It's still good, but you're not going to want every ship to have grappler because that minus 50% attack reduction is pretty significant. Robust is now +1 orders as governor and plus half an order per city as leader. This is down from +2 orders as governor and +1 order per city as leader. So essentially the trait is now half as good as it was before, which is still fine. Orders are probably the best resource to have in Old World because more orders lets you do more things. And robust is still a very, very good trait, even at half strength. So glad to see this change happen. Similar to Grappler, the tacticians are now minus 20% attack strength instead of minus 20% combat strength. That means if you have a tactician leader on a unit, it now just attacks slightly less hard. Remember, it also stuns as a leader, but is no longer more vulnerable to getting sniped because it is no longer doesn't have the minus 20% combat strength, which affected defense as well. Orator governors are now -1 discontent per culture level and do not have the ability to rush with orders anymore, which is a pretty significant change. Judge governors here can hurry production with money. That change is actually getting reverted from what I understand on the Discord. So stand by to see what the new patch will show. But from my understanding, judges are not going to be able to do that. And then patrons get a new luxury with every city that they found called literature. This is just like every other luxury. You can send it to families, you can send it to cities, you can send it to other nations, but they lost the ability to rush with gold, hurry production with gold. Skipping ahead here, Orthodoxy now has the ability to rush production, any production with orders, not just specialists with cities with state religion. This is a pretty good buff to Orthodoxy and makes going down to get doctrine, that tech, a little better. I thought it'd be worth doing a quick before and after with hurrying production. So this is from my spreadsheet. This is the current state of hurrying production. And then over here in this tab, we have the new state. So you can see what's changed. With gold, hurrying production with gold, you can't hurry with patrons anymore at all with can't hurry projects. So that's just gone away. And then on the order side, the commander leader has lost their ability to hurry with orders in the capital city. Instead, the Orthodoxy law lets you hurry with orders if you have state religion in that city. And then on the project side, the orator governor has lost the ability to hurry production with orders for projects. And instead, now the Orthodoxy law allows that. So those are the significant changes. And the judge change, as I noted, is not happening as far as I know, but stand by to see what adjustments come to the test patch, and things may be different when they go live. So read those final patch notes carefully once they do go live. Going back to the notes, traders now get +2 culture per bullion instead of orders. And on seat, they also get the fair. The traders now have a whole host of benefits. The culture, I think, is a better fit per bullion resource than the orders were. They still keep their courtier. That happens on founding, and now they get fair. Fair is the legendary version of the market line, and just happens in the seat for free. It basically makes the city have +50% gold, which is kind of nice. So just for example, I'm going to found as traders here as Carthage. I still get my court merchant, and then you'll see that there's now this fair building here that automatically gives you +50% gold in the city. You can see that fair is boosting the gold in the city significantly, which is pretty awesome. And with traders getting that culture, landowners now no longer get the culture per crop resource. Instead, they get +20 money per crop resource. They still have their rural specialist production time decrease, but no longer have culture per crop resource, instead money. I think this is pretty good. Landowners were really, really strong. Money's probably slightly less valuable than culture. So yeah, I mean, landowners were a very strong family and traders were not. So it makes sense to see those slightly rebalanced that way. So the engineering law can now bridge rivers on both sides. And the way this works, the engineering law is pretty deep in here. Basically means that now roads allow you to move across rivers. Not entirely sure how this is going to go down, in that that's already the case today. Roads do bridge across rivers, and it's also going to be weird what happens to your movement. Like if you swap between philosophy and engineering, theoretically, all your roads, your bridges just get blown up. I'll be curious to see whether this change stays in, but it does make engineering slightly better, although I think I still would pick engineering over philosophy, although generally I'm not going as deep as architecture tech-wise. So I do kind of miss the fact that bridges work without engineering, so we'll see whether this change sticks around. Here's another great quality of life change. Regents no longer change the succession. They only occupy the leader position. This solves some bugs that you see with regents getting essentially everyone pissed off that they have bypassed the succession and sometimes even triggering events where heirs go insane. So this is a good change. I presume this may change the legitimacy aspect. I'm not actually sure and don't have a test game with a regent that I can load up. So I'm curious whether this actually makes it so that regents don't cause effectively a legitimacy hit. Presumably yes, but I'm not sure. This would be great for clarification. Mounted units can no longer advance unless they can rout. This is a little bit cryptic, so let's take a look at what this actually means in practice. Here we are on our combat arena test map, and I've spawned a bunch of cataphracts and some hapless militia and some war elephants. So if this cataphract attacks this militia, normally it would, as a horse unit, advance and take that square. But since there's nothing for it to route further, it stays where it is. So that's a change. If, in contrast, we attack this way, because it can route, it will move over and occupy that tile and continue to sort of move along. This essentially is a pretty significant change to mounted units in that they won't move over to occupy the tile that they attack on, where they killed the unit, unless there's something that they can move over and route. So here, I finished this route chain. Normally I would move one over. Now I'm not going to be able to do that. So this is a slight diminishment in the power of route, but I think it's a good one because mounted units essentially had an order where they could attack and move into a square, things that normally would take 2 orders to do, in fact 2 whole turns sometimes to do, and now they require essentially the route chain to be there. And importantly, for units that don't have route, like war elephants, base war elephants, not Carthage war elephants, since they don't have route, they don't advance at all. So only units with route are going to advance, and only when they can actually route. Next up, we've got reduced frequency of distant raids. Distant raids show up in single player and in multiplayer free-for-all, but not in duels. Essentially, these are the raids that come off the side of the map. Basically, tribes that you can't see off the side of the map just showing up, and now they're less frequent. Personally, I would love to see these raids gone entirely. I don't really love them at all, but I'll take them showing up less frequently and showing up further in the game than before. I currently think I have an FFA where I have a distant raid showing up on turn 20 or something, and glad that's no longer going to be the case. Religion spread is now impacted by the size of the map, and credit here to Xiao Mao on the Discord for the data mining. TLDR basically is religion now has a base chance to spread that's 5%. So Zoroastrianism, Judaism were 10, they're now 5. Christianity were 15, and Manichaeism were 15, they're now 10. But you get a bonus per the size of the map. So for a small map, it's +2, plus a medium map, it's +4, large +6, and extra large +8%. So on a large or medium map, it's basically the same that was before. Makes a little, on a smaller map, religion spreads a little less, and on a larger, very large map, it spreads a little more than before. Hold Court, which is the leader judge mission, when your ruler is a judge, they have a mission called Hold Court, now has a 20% chance to find a new courtier. This is great. In general, I'm a huge fan of anything that gets you a reliable source of courtiers, and judge leaders were already a little bit underwhelming, so glad to see this change. As you can see here, Hold Court has this 20% chance. So I spammed Hold Court a bunch until I could actually get the event that shows you a new courtier. It's actually not an event, it's just a pop-up. While holding court, you discovered a promising new courtier, and then it's a random courtier that just gets generated there and added. So that's very nice. You now have essentially a reliable-ish way of getting courtiers as a judge leader, and so it makes judge leaders a little bit stronger, which is nice to see. Next, we've got some scenario changes that you can use higher tier units in Carthage 2, some more changes in the Carthage campaign. The independent city event, where a city will sometimes become autonomous and not let you do anything, will no longer happen in family seats or capitals. There's some fixes to the Middle East map, and near and dear to my heart, there's an additional option for the force march setting, which is pretty cool. Now, Normally, Force March just has unlimited. You can move as far as you like, or it can be disabled. I've played games with disabled, and it just is a little too constrained. Sometimes you want to just spend 100 training to move the unit one or two more tiles, and you can't. But now there's this new setting called double fatigue. So what this means is units can't move more than 200% of their fatigue limit. And I think this is the sweet spot that I'm personally going to be playing in multiplayer. It lets units move a little bit, but not too much. Sort of a forced march where you're like, okay, this army is going to march twice as far as it would have marched normally. That seems reasonable, where before you could have, if you had sufficient orders, you could have a unit march halfway across an entire map with unlimited force march. So I'm going to definitely be playing new multiplayer games on double fatigue, and I'm super excited to see this in the game. So I've got a test map here with double fatigue on as the force march setting. If I grab this slinger, I can move it over here, and now I see I can't move any further. I can hit force march, and then I can move it some more, like for example here, but then I can't move any further because that's the limit of how it can move. It can move just twice as far as it normally could. And now just for illustrative purposes, notice that this scout has 4 fatigue, unlike the slinger that had 3. If I move it here, give myself some additional orders, move it here, then I can't move anymore until I hit force march. And then I can move 4 more fatigue over. It doesn't actually display this very well, but that's all you can move, and now you can't move anymore. So I'd love to have a little better of that display, and also perhaps have the preview show it to it. But essentially, the fatigue controls how much you can force march, and then you can force march once again as much fatigue as you had, although it's not tracked in any way apart from the unit not being able to move. So it'd be great if that could have some sort of visual indication, maybe the pips refill or something with another color. But all in all, love this change. I have been so looking forward to this change for Force March. I think I've been advocating on the Discord for several months, so I'm super, super excited to see this finally in the game at long last. And very, very, I think this is going to be the perfect medium of Force March, still useful if you need a little bit extra movement without really enabling hilariously distant abuses where you could just march across an entire map given sufficient orders. That's all the design changes. Then there's some improvements with multiplayer, improved visibility, improved support for map script modding, improved memory usage, which is always great to see. Mods can potentially say I should only be the only mod running, and allow lists and block lists for mods. UI changes as well. Additionally, great changes there. Always good to see improvement for UI. Got performance warnings for laptops. Don't try playing Old World on a battery-powered laptop, I guess, because it'll make AI turns take longer. Exiting the main menu from a scenario goes back to the scenario screen. Adding a setting to skip renaming the landmark pop-ups. That's kind of cool. And that setting lives here in Options UI. There's now default landmark names that basically gets rid of the pop-up that shows when you find a landmark and just uses the default ones. So that's really nice for multiplayer, especially for network multiplayer, where you might be playing very quickly and you won't get the prompt for the default landmark name. So that's great to see. And this is what it looks like in game. I've discovered this plane. I get no notice that I've actually discovered it, except for I do get 2 legitimacy, and there was a sound that very briefly played. It'd be cool if there was a notification or something. But the pop-up is gone, and I do get the legitimacy. And then just very quickly, if someone else has found a landmark before you, you'll still get this pop-up right now. I wish this was a notification as well, informing you someone else has found it and giving you that 1 legitimacy. Continuing along, right-click on a non-UI space with the decision pop-up open. Now minimizes it. That's pretty cool if you've got a decision event. Added reminder category counts to reminders tooltips. Essentially what this is you now have this idle counselor is 1, tells you there's one idle counselor with 1 reminder. So pretty handy to keep track of things that way. General improvements to tooltips, hurrah, hurrah. Disable network server and cloud MP buttons if there's no internet connection. Some improvements for Steam Deck Play. Tooltip help to air preview UI on the family tree screen with portraits and ratings. State religion subheading is now added in the religions category. This is a good change. You now have this state religion subheading here. It shows you what your state religion is, so you can easily realize you need to adopt one if you don't have one. And if you do have a state religion, it shows you what your state religion here is, and presumably lets you easily leave that state religion there. So that makes it very clear what your state religion is. This is a great change because it was a little hard to figure out what your state religion is. This was the only icon, as well as the actual ability to adopt a state religion was very, very limited. It was hard to discover. Now there's a big glaring area in the UI that is literally there for state religion, so that should make it a lot easier for folks to figure out how to adopt state religion. And lastly, there's a new icon added to disciples. I can't quite figure out what that icon is. Post in the Discord for clarification. Bunch of bug fixes, which is always good to see. Ignore lecture reminder is no longer going to reset itself. There's not going to be tooltip spawn while holding shift. Cyclopedia will no longer open if there's no entry available. The African elephant won't clip. Burn pillage icons will show up for allied tribe units. Trash text will no longer show in the redraw tooltip. Bunch of additional player alliance visibility issues. The game loss pop-up. Widows will no longer marry on the same turn. That's kind of a funny bug fix. The debt notification now blinks. UI fixes and event fixes and localization fixes. So all in all, another solid patch. Always exciting to see how this game continues to evolve and improve week after week, month after month. The biggest changes, I think, in this patch are really the changes to hurrying production, which there may be a follow-up as this patch continues on the test server. And probably the headline is patrons losing the ability to rush projects with gold. That's a pretty significant nerf for patrons, but probably a necessary one, especially with scholars now being tied to basically being the scholar inquiry being a governor feature instead of a leader feature. That was kind of open to abuse. As well as personally, I'm really happy with the force march change. I've been wanting that double fatigue force march for a long time, and I'm super excited to see it finally in the game. I'm excited to try it out in some multiplayer games. All right, that's it for this patch review. Have a good one.